Okay, so you just watched that video on solidarity and Poland. And the question that I asked you on there was, while watching, consider what a pragmatist, what the realist camp would say as a policy for the Polish situation, and what the hardliner or neocon liberal would say. So, what if you haven't asked yourself that? Stop, do that really fast, and then come back. Okay, so here's the situation. So by December 1981, that's in that video, that was when the tanks started rolling in, when they did martial law, shut everything down, put the solidarity leaders into jail, blah blah blah. Um, Soviet Union refuses to intervene. So this is sending a pretty clear signal to the rest of the world. Now, obviously, the Soviet Union is intervening, right? It's telling the Polish leaders, hey, we need you guys to do something about this. It's just that the Soviet tanks aren't rolling across the border, which is a big difference in what happened in the Cold War in places like Hungary and Czechoslovakia, where that did happen, where the Soviet tanks did roll across the border. But the Soviet Union said to Poland, you take care of this, but definitely take care of this. So then the question becomes, what should the United States do? What should Europe do? What should the Western world do? So if you are so obviously there's this infighting over what the U.S. response should be. If you're a hardliner, if you're one of those neocons, what would your advice be, your foreign policy advice? I'm rhetorically letting you answer this there. Okay, so here's what the hardliner said. The hardliner said, tough economic sanctions. Like, be tough. Tell the communists, I mean the Polish really, but the Soviets too, that we are basically not sending troops, but we're getting involved. Crack down on things. Send a clear signal that the United States does not want this to happen. The defensive realists or the pragmatists, their position was don't do anything. Just sort of let the situation play out. By getting involved, you're actually going to sort of tip the balance a little bit. So just let the situation play out. What do the Western European allies want? What does France, what does Germany want, or West Germany, I should say? They're the ones like on the scene. What would they want? The answer is they agree with the pragmatists. They're in the same position of, if a war happens because you keep poking the bear, it's going to roll through Europe. We're going to be the ones hit, not you guys. So just chill out, let the situation play out. All right. So that takes us to March 1982. So again, this is happening December 1981. There's still this sort of conversation about what we should do. The Poland situation doesn't get much better, but it doesn't get much worse. It just sort of hits this new sort of balance. So there's a March 1982 NSC meeting, National Security Council. They're getting together, and they say, by the way, that's Reagan there, and these are jelly beans right here. You can see that. Reagan loved jelly beans. It's a super weird thing about Reagan, but he loved jelly beans. So there you go. This is Haig right here, the guy that said, I'm in charge, So he's Secretary of State at the time, sitting right next to Reagan there. March 1982, National Security Council meeting. Who's at the table? And the answer is, if we broaden this picture out and we looked around, almost everybody in attendance are hardliners. They're all neocons. So whether Reagan was a neocon or not doesn't really matter. What matters is his advice getting around the table is almost all the same advice. They all recommend sanctions. And Reagan says, hand me some jelly beans, and yes, I agree. So Europe, how does Europe feel about this? Europe is pissed. They are furious at the U.S. policy, and Reagan just basically ignores them, says, don't worry about it. Now, here's the deal. So obviously, the U.S. is going to put sanctions on Poland. So obviously, trade going from the U.S. to Poland, it's not really going to exist. But was there a lot of trade from the U.S. to Poland? No, there already wasn't. So it's not like there was a lot of sanctions there. What you need the Europeans to come on board, because if the Europeans put sanctions on Poland, then there would be some serious economic problems for Poland. But the Europeans didn't agree with this. The sanctions have almost zero effect. All right, that's March 1982. By July 1982, that whole situation with Haig had blown up. He is now gone, and a new guy comes in, Secretary of State George Shultz. And I showed you on the last thing, he is a pragmatist. He's also a much better politician. This guy was, Haig was a general. Shultz was a politician, just straight up businessman. He was a better manager. He could do all this stuff, but I can't even write. Better than Haig in all those sense. And the question that we don't really have a good answer to, because it makes a big difference, but why did Reagan pick a pragmatist? Why didn't he just pick another hardliner? He definitely went from hardliner to pragmatist. And there's not a good answer to that. There's not a good, we don't have anything in his biography or anything like that to say. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is 1983. We're not going to do this here. You're going to take a look at a quick video about the nuclear freeze and Reagan's speech. Because even though he brings in a pragmatist in 1982, all indications are Reagan is still super hardliner.